as you file in. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. Okay, it looks like some very lovely familiar faces. Welcome to you all. There's Patrice and Carrie and Karen, Susan, Sabina, Sammy, Joe, Erica, Kim, Rebecca, Apanos, Kim Andrews, Michael McSwain, Deb. Welcome to you all. I'm sure a few more will file in. And I don't want to waste the precious time of our honored guest here, Tashi Mannox. So just give me a second to introduce Tashi, who is perhaps the foremost calligrapher, Tibetan calligrapher on the planet right now. Really, someone who has made such huge, tremendous sacrifices to ensure that a long legacy of calligraphy is maintained. There's a wonderful story of how Buddhist traditions are now going and asking Tashi Mannox to restore broken lineages. So truly a remarkable human being. Lama Tashi Mannox, we should also remember, has spent a lot of time in meditative retreat and is tried and true in terms of both his scholarship but also his meditative acumen. And he's working out of the UK right now. He's in a very lovely cottage with a beautiful garden that I often get a little glimpse of in Instagram. I share equal parts amazement with where he lives as what he does for a living. But I have to just say he's one of the most lovely energies that I've ever got to be around, and always feel so blessed that in his busy schedule he can make some time with us. Of course, Tashi Mannox was with us last year in the Tantra series and did such a wonderful job introducing the Bija mantra, seed syllable for Tara. And I contacted him to see if he would rejoin us and was happy to get a reply yes. So Tashi's going to lead us through a process called the Ensō. In my mind, it's a virtual experience of emptiness, but I'll let Tashi describe it in his own words, and I'll let you enjoy as much as possible in the online format some of his wonderful buoyance and energy. And without further ado, Tashi Mannox.
Thank you very much. Very humbling introduction for me. Thank you. That's very kind. So what we're looking at here today with this virtual session with you all, I don't know how many there are of you, but more than a few, which is good. Very nice to welcome you all through this little screen into my home. I live in a place which is quite remote, so now we're plugged into the rest of the world. That always kind of amuses me somehow, the fact that I can have so many people in my sitting room, as it were. But yeah, everyone's very, very welcome. And what Mars has asked me to do in a way is kind of giving me a free rein, really, is to explain this process of creativity and do it. Interrupt, Miles, if I'm going off track here. But to explain that with a demonstration, if you like, an introduction, somewhat of an empowerment in a way, to explain this meditative approach to creativity through this Japanese tradition of painting in Ensō. And Ensō, if you don't know, is this complete circle from the Zen master's point of view can be explained as, yes, this circle of emptiness. In a very naive way, we can explain it like that. But really, it's about your approach to doing this. It's like the Ensō itself, this ink that manifests on the paper, really is the byproduct of the process that we're going through with ourselves, like a meditation. Now, it interests me with my own work, not just as an artist, but especially as a calligrapher working in these Tibetan writing systems, which are highly disciplined. And of course, one of the elements of being disciplined is to have the ability to have focus. You know, if you're not focused, then it's very difficult to have that discipline. In fact, it's the discipline itself that that brings about the focus, because of non-distraction. So good discipline, good focus, of course, comes from more of a calm state of mind, undistracted state of mind. And I certainly, before creating any of my more major artworks or calligraphy pieces, such as we explored before with some of you, with the bija of the seed syllable tam. Even before I create artwork as such, then I usually give myself some space, some time for formal meditation. Formal meditation, of course, is the basis, is the foundation for us Dharma practitioners. It's the foundation of everything in life. It's from where we can go into, we call it activity, from the meditation. And the meditation itself, formal sitting meditation, gives us this sense of wholeness and confidence that if we're well practiced, we have the ability to take that from our meditation cushion into the outside world, or into other activity within our homes, or our studio, or wherever it is. And I think this is even more apparent at the moment because of this situation that we've been forced into over the past 18 months or so. And this pandemic doesn't seem to have a certain end in sight. There's still a lot of uncertainty, and we have to focus on ourselves to be at home more. We don't know whether there's going to be more lockdowns. We certainly have to be more careful, that's for sure. So there's this, for myself personally, as an artist, it's been a great opportunity actually to be more focused inward at home and not so distracted outwards. And as Miles did mention, I did do this traditional long retreat, traditionally 3 years, 3 months and 3 days. We kind of did an extra long version, it's actually 4 years. So I'm accustomed, and that's when I was in my early 20s. So I'm kind of accustomed knowing how to be in one place with myself. It does take some, again, it does take some self-discipline to be in one place. We travel in our daily life. We travel every day, perhaps to work. We take longer excursions for holidays or for work abroad, and we can gather a lot of experience and wisdom from being out there. But likewise, we can gather a different sort of wisdom from being with ourselves, in a retreat situation. So I think this is a good way as Dharma practitioners to see a lockdown as a good opportunity, you know, to be with yourself. I heard on the radio some time ago, everybody was saying, oh, how difficult it is to be at home, you know, and people struggle with their own company. And this person on the radio says, well, so, you know, this is about time now you started to accept yourself, you know, and be with yourself instead of always being distracted. This is your golden opportunity, you know, to be with yourself. But of course, just sitting there doing nothing isn't terribly healthy. You know, we kind of go stare crazy. So for me as an artist, it's a great opportunity to have the peace and quiet to be more creative, you know, and I have really set myself up with too many projects at the moment because I've had this great time to do that. And I've ended up more busy than I ever have been from home. Kind of ironic, really, but I do feel that I'm achieving a lot. But that takes discipline as well. That takes non-distraction as well. How do you work successfully from home if you have a regular job that you're having to work remotely? And many of us are on our laptops and our computers. We don't have a boss breathing down our neck. You know, we don't have peers that we're sort of sparring against and sort of trying to do our best, and we are completely responsible for ourselves and for our own time. And I think this is, for many people, had to learn how to be in the same place and learn to be productive without the usual distractions, to discipline yourself to do that. And that's not an easy thing. So this is what we're all having to learn. Being creative is a really, for me, and I think for most people, is a really good way to do something at home that is an expression of freedom. It is an expression of freedom, and I'll go into that more. I think for most people, they express this this feeling or this experience of freedom when they're doing art. Not necessarily art as painting. It could be composing music. It could be gardening. It could be cooking. Anything that engages one in being creative. Creativity doesn't just belong to the artist. We're all creative in some way. And it gives us this sense of freedom. And the common, as I was going to say, the common, what you call, phrase for this is people say, oh, when I'm gardening or when I'm painting, you know, I'm in the zone. What does that mean, you're in the zone? You know, it means you're actually, as this says, I don't know whether you can see here, it says be present. You're actually present here, now, in the moment, as one should be for meditation. So when you're in that zone of creativity, you have this immense feeling of satisfaction. There's a completeness about it. You feel complete because there's nothing else really going on. You've forgotten about the worries of the world and what you're supposed to be doing. You're just in that present state of nowness. And art, and especially this Ensō, is really to enforce that, to practice that being in the present state of nowness. That's what it's for. Traditionally, I should start by saying, although I'm a Tibetan calligrapher, the tradition of Ensō was never in Tibet. They didn't have this tradition. This is very much a Japanese Zen Buddhist manifestation. It was used by the Roshi to assess how his students were, the monks were, what their state of mind was, because everything is manifest, their state of mind, their emotion, their hesitation, everything is mapped out like a recording in the Ensō. So the Roshi can look and see straight away a person's spiritual development, how relaxed they are, how open they are, how much inattention they may have, trying too hard, to do the perfect Ensō, competitive with the other monks. Everything is read within the Ensō. And so we can do this for ourselves. We can assess ourselves. We don't necessarily need the Roshi, to do that, the Lama to do that. It's a great practice in itself. And the reasons why I teach it is because I'm often asked to give workshops. And of course, workshops more in the meditative approach to creativity. Now, I can't expect the participants of the workshops to turn up and know how to write Tibetan. That's a whole different ball game, is learning that discipline of how to write properly the Tibetan language. And that will be an awful lot to expect of a participant to do that. So by painting in the Ensō, it's a circle. It's not a whole language that one has to learn, but yet the approach to it is exactly the same as when I'm writing calligraphy. I'll come back to the Ensō in a little bit time. When I was in the 4-year retreat, I was quite kind of young, in my early 20s, when I was put in the retreat. I was a monk already, and it was suggested that I went into the retreat. They say if you're able to complete a long retreat when you're young, then the advantage is you're kind of set up for the rest of your life. But the disadvantage is when you're young, you tend to be much more fidgety, and difficult to focus. So it's kind of hard. And I remember the first year, I found it a little bit difficult, personally speaking. I remember one summer, very warm, beautiful summer's day, and the window for my room was open, and the retreat centre is up in the Scottish hills, And it's an area that I actually partially grew up, so I know the area very well. And somehow, caught on the wind, I could hear teenagers, laughing and joking and having a really good time. And I knew kind of the direction it was coming from was this particular small river they call in Scotland, they call it burn. And it had a pool in it. And on a lovely warm summer's day, it was the best thing ever to go and jump in and out of this pool, to cool off and play. And I could hear that. And my goodness, that was difficult for me, sitting there in retreat, to hear that and to remember how I was, how lovely it is, I really miss that. And I was not managing my time terribly well, my energy very well. And so the retreat master, Tibetan Lama, he very skillfully said, okay, so we must occupy your time well. During the session time in the retreat, you must be in the session and try your best and to do the meditation, all the chanting you do, all the ritual and everything. You must do that. But then during the breaks, because you have pee breaks and tea breaks and food breaks, you know, yoga breaks, during the breaks, instead of sort of idly sitting around and perhaps chatting with the other monks or whatever you do, you know, grab your cup of tea, and we have a spare room here. You can go and sit in there and you can copy these ancient manuscripts. That they are so ancient that the pages are falling apart, and we really need to copy them before they disappear. And your job is, as a scribe, is to go and copy them. And you can channel your kind of fidgety energy into being creative. So that was quite interesting, and it worked. I kind of became really ambitious to get these long manuscripts copied, and some of them would take a whole year. I'd perhaps do, if I was lucky, in one day, perhaps half a side of a page or something like that. And when you've got hundreds of pages, then it takes a long time. And it was a very useful exercise because it channeled my fidgety mind into doing something that was useful for everybody. I think they're still being used now as you know, manuscripts. And it was very much like a yardstick to measure my own inner self. The quality of the calligraphy of the Tibetan needed to be really of a high standard from the very beginning to the middle, right to the end of the manuscript that I was copying as a scribe. And over a year period, it was quite something to manage yourself and to keep that high standard all the way through. It reminded me, it must have been like these medieval Christian scribes, you know, who wrote beautiful Coptic scripts and beautiful Irish scripts for the Bible and so forth. And they must have done this out of a complete labor of love. And they would have had to be undistracted in a state of meditation to do this. They must have. You know. And having done it myself, I can really kind of get under their skin, and I can really understand how it must have been for them. You know. They didn't have central heating and stuff like that. You know, it would have been cold, especially up in Scotland and Ireland and places like that. So yeah, they must have gone through a lot of hardship to produce these absolute beautiful, like the Book of Kells, you know, you see in Dublin. Anyway, I soon discovered that sometimes, whilst copying these manuscripts, and as quietly and really concentrating, every mark that I made had purpose and meaning. It wasn't just idly like scribbling and copying. You know, everything was considered because I wanted to be as clear and as coherent as possible. So if I noticed, if there's any emotion inside myself, any perhaps I had stepped on some other monk's toes or something like that, so to speak, you know, so there's a little bit of upset. And I noticed that my quality of writing wasn't as good, even though I tried really hard. So the quality of the writing, this action of copying these manuscripts, really showed me my own state of mind, my own clarity of mind. So it was a really useful tool on how to work on myself. And that's the discipline that really gave me the foundation of what I do today. So coming back to the Ensō, I thought I would say just a little bit about creativity itself. In English, the word creativity is incredibly rich and diverse. It, as I said before, it represents freedom. It represents spontaneity. But as we know, any good art form is based on a foundation of being well trained, and this is what we call the discipline. It is based on that. Now, when we talk about creativity within the Tibetan Buddhist systems, there seems to be this is a rare occasion actually where there isn't really a word in Tibetan that is equal to a very rich and diverse word, creativity. And I've had discussions with many Tibetan lamas about this to really pinpoint. And one would think that, you know, the richness and the diverse richness of the iconography, the Tibetan Buddhist iconography, you would think they'd talk more about creativity, as Zen Buddhists do, and become a practice in itself. But there's one word in Tibetan which is very loosely translates as to be spontaneous, spontaneity, which is hlundrup, hlundrup. But really this means really completeness. It means to be complete. It's an expression of realization, you could say. It's an expression of enlightenment. Because when you're enlightened, it is total completeness. There's nothing more. There's no more trying. Everything else has been exhausted. Your karma has been exhausted. So what is it that you're complete? That's what it is. Miles, I noticed the screen is blank on the phone there. Are you still with us?
I'm definitely there. Yeah, people
Okay.
may be getting a quick drink of water. Some people may just blank out their screen. But I think you're probably only showing one image. But there's a bunch of us here. We're with you.
Okay. Good. I just needed to check up. Me talking away. If no, we've gone off air or something. Okay, but so coming back to what is the definition of creativity, you know, and we can break this down to three areas. And I think this is very, very interesting. In Tibetan, the first area is called tsal, and tsal means creative power. It's like the energy. It's the essence. It's this what you call intrinsic skill, or in more loose terms, we can say it's the talent. You know, it's that energy, it's the talent. Then the other ingredients that makes up creativity, of course, is to play, to be playful. And again, that's an expression of freedom. And I mean, I don't need to explain what being playful is. We all know what's been, you know, what playful is, to be playful. Then the other is gen. And gen means ornament. It's if you make tormas, you guys make tormas, and you have you put your butter discs on the tormas as an offering. The butter discs are called gen, and these are the ornaments that go on the dough, as it were. They can be very elaborate, all sorts of colours and amazing tonas. So this is the ornament. And the ornament really is the beauty of the result of being creative. It's the beauty. And then we can question, what is beauty? Because everyone have different tastes. And one person's beauty can be another person's ugly. It all depends on your kind of taste. But when we're talking about beauty in this way, in this sense, it's more again, it's more freedom. I'll come back to that. So these three elements here are the main ingredients, we can say, what makes up creativity. And that can be applied to anything. Now, the actual process itself, we'll talk about the process now of being creative. And as I indicated earlier, good creativity, a good manifestation of your creativity, you could say, is first from a meditative approach, which means you calm down, center yourself, not distracted, you're focused, you're calm. And as we know through meditation, and we talk about meditation all the time, is that by being calm, by being peaceful, then we have more clarity. Now, the clarity is essential for creating an Ensō, or relate to the Ensō, because you need to be in the present moment, not distracted. Not just from external distractions, but distractions within ourselves, our emotions. Trying too hard, as I said before. If we allow our emotions to overtake us, then it's going to taint whatever we produce. Now, there is space, there is room in the art world, you could say, for those artists who paint out of emotion, the angst, painting this and that, and there's a place for that. But in Dharma art, we can say that we're using creativity as a vehicle to tame our mind and to reflect on ourselves. Then we don't want these emotions to influence what we're painting, what we're writing, what we're composing in music. Because then when whoever sees the artwork or listens to the music, another person, they get the sense of your own personal rubbish, If you're allowing your emotions to come through the art, it's only going to be heard or read by the others. And I think this comes very much for the responsibility for an artist, or creative, I could say, anyone creative, more from a Dharma point of view, is that we have a responsibility to lift up humanity, not paint our own neurosis, to extend our ego or our our sorrow or whatever it is. As I said, that there's room for that, it has a place. But we have the responsibility to lift up. And if we are clear of our own neurosis, then we're more in touch with what we call the ultimate. That ultimate freedom, which is absolutely, perfectly pure, untainted. in touch with our own Buddha nature and communicating just that, Buddha nature that is intrinsic within everybody. Now we know that everybody has this potential to become enlightened. Everyone is enlightened, but they just don't realize it quite yet. So an artwork, a good artwork, created in a good way, in the right way, will, when the person sees it, open their heart. It will lift them up. It will put them in touch with what is ultimate. We all know Annie Lennox, yes? The Eurythmics. I was lucky enough to share lunch with her once. Maybe I've said this before, I can't remember, but it's a very nice story. And I said to her, oh, your music really made me feel happy, you know, as a teenager. It really, you know, what you sang was really beautiful. And may I share something with you? Because I believe that if we're being purely creative, we're in touch with what is ultimate. So communicating that rather than out of ego, communicating that whenever anyone hears your music is uplifted as well. And after all, isn't that kind of what all this iconography and tantra is all about? It's to transform, it is to put us in touch with what is ultimate, out of our deluded, dark, veiled way of seeing the world. We should have this pure view, this vision of the world. And when we see the Tibetan tanka painting, that's how they see the world. I had a conversation with my own tanka painter teacher, Sherapalden Beru, and I bumped into him walking one day on a grey day, and I said, oh, are you enjoying your walk, Sherap? And he said, oh yes, very nice. You know, it's a very grey, dull day, you know. And he really opened my eyes, because he says, look at the clouds. He said, look, the pink and yellow and green in the clouds. And I was like, and I looked, and I didn't see it first, and then I looked again. And yeah, even though it was a grey, miserable day, there's all these beautiful colours, very subtle colours. And he kind of opened my eyes. And then when I returned back to the monastery and I looked at his tanka painting, he was painting what he saw, you know, so he had this pure vision. Very nice. Putting in touch. And we can do that. Okay, so let's move on to the actual Ensō itself. And what I'll do is I will speak through the process. I'll just adjust the phone a little bit, the camera a little bit, so that it can be seen. If I come a bit closer. How does that look, Miles? You can see the paper, yes?
Looks fantastic.
Okay. So in the true Zen ways, you kneel with your zafu between your legs. And this actually is advantageous, really, because you can get right over the artwork. Now, everything with this practice of creating Ensō, you should see as sacred in a way. Every tool that you use should be seen with respect and with veneration, and very much like a Japanese tea ceremony. It's a practice of mindfulness and care. So it has a use that by learning this calm, clear and caring process, we can take that to everyday life when we do make a cup of tea or whatever. So the first part really that teaches us patience is what we call the grinding ink, and the ink itself is dried. It's on a stick, and water is added, and you spend a long time rubbing to dissolve this hard stick of ink with the water, and it trickles down into this well down here. Now I've already prepared that because we don't have all day. So just that in itself is really brings your focus into what you're doing and your patience. Now traditionally, the Japanese brush is used, looks something like this. It's held, they say, like you hold an egg. So we're not doing this, we're holding like an egg. You can see it's very fat and rounded here. And we're using the whole body. It's not just focusing on the tip of the brush. We focus on the whole body. There's a wholeness to this. And we can, there's even exercises. The Zen master will teach you particular exercises to open up, like Tai Chi, you know. So your whole body is engaged with this. Now, personally speaking, I don't find this particular brush very good. I use a cheap decorator's brush. It's great for practice, and I'm showing you this because you can get these brushes just about everywhere. I think this one's made in Spain, but I'm sure you can get them anywhere. And the brush, the bristles are a little bit stiffer, so there's a bit more control there. With a Japanese brush, they're very soft, and you need to be really skillful, really well practiced to control a soft brush. So that's the brush. Now, normally just before we start, we take the brush and we hold it and we bow to the brush out of respect, as all the tools that we use, out of respect. And we take it. Then comes the paper. You have to size up the area. You want your awareness to be in the full area. We don't want to be shyly doing a little circle in the corner. We need to be aware of course, where the edges of the paper are. Otherwise, we'll be going off, you know. So the Ensō, the circle, is placed well in the middle. So this needs consideration. Of course, this will improve with practice. We could do an Ensō a day as your meditation practice. Lots of paper. We could do it on newspaper. It doesn't have to be posh, expensive paper. Now, to do this, you need to, of course, not only be meditative and calm and clear, but you need to be fearless. You need those two ingredients essential to meditation itself and life, of not to have expectation of it, you know, wanting it to be amazing, looking for that, and at the same time not have fear, to be frightened of it, or fear of the failure of not doing it well. These are qualities, as you know, we should have for meditation, and for life. We should have that, especially if you're going for a job interview, isn't it? Not to go in without expectation and without fear. And we can, you need to hold the paper in one corner. We can do a dry run if you like, just to size up. We normally start with ourselves at the bottom, work out, and then end back at the bottom. Not like we'd write an O, we start at the top and end at the top. You always start with yourself, and you generously give out and return back to the self. It also, if you do the mandala, if you know about mandalas, the easterly quarter is always yourself and you're facing the easterly quarter. So you always start at the bottom and work around the 5 Buddha families and return to your mirrored self at the bottom. So that's the traditional way. So look at the paper, get a feeling of the size, notice the limitations of the paper. We need to do this because within our mind, there isn't limitations of paper. An Ensō, you can paint an Ensō in your mind as big as the universe, can't you? There's no limitation, there's no limit in the mind. But of course, we have to respect this piece of paper, that it has limits, and it is disciplining us to be within that limit. Now, when you've got the sense of the paper and you feel free in your mind, not anxious, no anxiety about this, no grasping and no fear, then you can load the brush. Load the brush with the ink. Now, when you think you've got enough ink, you can come over the paper, you raise your arm right up, and then you strike down to start. And once you've started, you can start backwards and then forwards. Once you've started, don't stop. There's no hesitation. Just follow on round. Finish off gently. Now, the practice normally, if you're facing somebody, your helper, they would take that piece of paper away before you even have time to look and consider it. Because we're not looking for, oh, I've done a perfect circle, or, oh, that's a terrible circle. Oh, I can see the hesitation. I can see for this one, it's off, a little bit off to the left. Before one has judgment of what you just created, it's taken away. Because it's not about the end result. The whole practice is going through it. This recording, this is a recording of those few seconds that you went around. That's a direct recording of how you were in your mind at that time. And there's no hiding from that. And that's why, in some ways, people find creating an Ensō so terrifying, but so exciting as well, because you're there in the very moment. There's nothing else. You're complete in that moment of time. It's quite liberating if you can get over the fear and the hesitation and, you know, the trying and all that stuff that we're dealing with in our mind all the time anyway. So that's why it's such an excellent practice. Now then, as an art piece, if I'm going to say, well, I'm kind of, all right, that's fine, no judgment, but I'll carry on through. Normally then, with a very, very fine tip of your Japanese brush, you would make a signature. If this is one you're going to keep or give away or whatever. And And because this is such a fat brush, I kind of just use a pencil, to be honest. You place your signature or mark, whatever you want to, or saying or quote, but normally if it's your signature, you place it down more humbly in the bottom right hand corner, because that's when you write a letter, that's where you finish. So that's the more humble place that we add that. Now you'd have a chop, your seal, your personal seal, and we can use a chop to really authenticate the artwork, your name or who it is. But we can also use it, because it's bright red, we can use it as a very clever way of balancing out the whole composition. Because this is kind of floating off a little bit to the left there, I would bring this signature, this chop with the signature, because it's red, it kind of brings the balance back again. We can use it in that way. You can be quite creative with the Ensō as well, with the seal. You can have more than one. You could put the seal right up there. You could put it up there, wherever it is. But traditionally, in the basic way, it's normally affixed to your signature. Part of your signature will overlap onto the seal. So there you have the classical white paper, black Ensō, red seal. Very simple. The perfection is in the imperfection. To me, it's completely ordinary, nothing special, but at the same time, it's absolutely wonderful because it's honest. It is what it is. If I'm given a course where there's many people in the room, then I'd encourage them even not to look at another's, not to compare, because that's the whole problem with us in our society, how we always compare all the time, mine's better than yours, or mine's not as good as yours, or all that sort of thing. It is what it is. And that's the beauty of it. If it wasn't such an expensive piece of paper, this one, I would screw it up if it was newspaper and use it to light the fire. No attachment to it. You just keep doing it. A good way to practice this, if you want to do it as daily practice, especially if you live in a warm, dry environment, you have a very long stick with a brush on the end, and you go outside and you paint an Ensō on the paving on the sidewalk, and then within a few seconds the sun evaporates it, it's gone. But then you can paint another one just using water. So is that clear enough? And
perfectly clear. One question, Tashi. Sometimes I see the Ensō incomplete.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts on the completed versions versus the incomplete versions?
There's a whole load of stuff they say about it. For me, it's just how my mood takes me, really. Just that's how it manifests. But yes, I can't remember exactly now. There is a difference between an open one and a closed one. I mean, there's endless different types of Ensō, isn't there? And yet it's such a simple, basic thing, yet it's incredibly complicated, and there's so many different forms. It's fascinating. In its simplicity, it's fascinating. a great practice.
I'm thinking I'm going to get my boys to do some sidewalk chalk.
Good idea, isn't it? It's very nice, very easy.
I wonder if we have a few minutes here. I wonder if anybody has. You take a few questions, Tashi?
Yeah, there's time, isn't there?
Yeah. Anybody comments or questions?
I'd like to ask a question. Thank you very much. I just really enjoyed your demonstration and explanations. You have I'd love to see more of your work. You have an Instagram account, did you?
Yes, 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 I do. It's just my name, Tashi Mannox,
Oh, okay.
TashiMannox, just Tashi Mannox. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's probably the best way to see my work. I enjoy Instagram,
Mhm.
and yeah, you'll see everything there.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Tashi, I had a question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been so exciting. Can you remind me what you mentioned? 3 qualities of creativity in Tibetan: Sal,
Yes.
Jen, and what was the 3rd quality I missed, or the 2nd quality? I missed the name in Tibetan.
Play, roll.
Roll, roll. Okay, thank you.
ROL in phonetics, roll. Sal, roll. Yeah, I could paint more on this. You obviously practice some Tibetan, yes? Oh, she's gone.
No, more Japanese than that. I'm just curious about, yeah.
Okay. They use the word roll actually for the, it's the word used for the ritual music. When you hear during the prayers, the cymbals and all that, that's called roll. Or roll more is the round cymbals, roll. But it means to play, to be playful.
Thank you, Tashi. Thank you for letting us play with you today.
Pleasure.
Michael had a question. Michael had a question about acquiring, the basic tools to get started. If we wanted to do a process, what would you recommend, like a beginner, the most essential kit, I guess?
Really, it doesn't matter about paper. As I said, you can use newspaper, anything, cheap newsprint, brushes. You could invest. The brushes can be very expensive, the Japanese ones. So as I said, these very simple ones, as long as it's completely rounded and to a slight point. The ink itself, you don't have to grind the ink. You can buy ready mixed ground ink. If you go down to the Chinese Quarter, to these shops that sell books and calligraphy materials, you can buy it. It can be quite cheap, but beware, the cheapest one is actually made from ground car tires. If you're into recycling, that's fantastic. But I kind of don't like that idea. Yeah.
And anybody else with any further questions or comments?
I have a very quick question to ask. Thank you, Tashi, so much for your beautiful work. Do you also practice Thai Buddhist calligraphy? Because that is also beautiful work. And I'm wondering if you do that as well.
I can't, no. If I had another 30 years on my life, I could perhaps learn another writing tradition. I mean, it's been a lifetime just learning Tibetan. Perhaps I'm very slow or something, but I'm not multilingual in that way. But I do believe that if you are proficient in one writing calligraphy, then you understand all writing calligraphy traditions of the world, because it is about penmanship. It is about, your attitude towards it. It is.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Tashi, it was really remarkable. I wasn't expecting all the prelude, which were those beautiful stories, and just the way you carry yourself is the teaching. And it's so refreshing how you know, just the energy, as I mentioned at the top, it really shines through. Just the quality of your mind. So nice to have time with you. And can I just make one very cheeky request of you?
Yes, go on.
I would love if you could take a picture, a high quality picture of that painting there, and send it to us, and maybe we can
Yeah,
use it
sure.
use it in house somehow.
Yeah, sure. I can do that.
Uh,
No problem whatsoever. It
and
is.
is there
I'm happy because it will make use of it.
and if there's anything we can do for you, is there anything that we can, you know, if you can think of anything that we can do for you as a team here, we'd love to support you and your work. Beyond the Instagram, we'll post your website and all the beautiful artwork that you have there for sale. So
Yeah.
we'll be happy to do that too.
No, that'd be great. I mean, yeah, just having, yeah, just so that people know my Instagram. Actually, my website, I'm in the middle of building a new one, so there's something more exciting to look forward to. And it's been, I haven't really given the old website much attention for the past couple of years. So there's a whole load of work that's waiting in the wings to be published, to go online. A lot more up for sale as well. But yeah, like any artist, we all need the support. We all need the recognition. It's luckily, I have to say, you asked me in the beginning about relating this to the pandemic. Luckily, normally when there's a world recession, and we do have a world recession in some ways, normally the arts get hit very hard first because it's considered a luxury, you know. But somehow I've profited quite well. Not enormously rich, but at least my income didn't go down. It actually stabilized, and for some part it actually went up. And I think it's because of two things. People during lockdown, they're forced to be in their homes, and they're sitting there perhaps looking at blank walls. Everybody's improving their home, making it more friendly, making it a more of an enjoyable environment to be in, and that includes buying and hanging artworks. The other reason is, of course, people haven't been traveling so much, spending money on holidays and all that sort of thing. And I'm talking very generally here. Of course, I can't speak for everybody, because in some parts of the world it's certainly not the case, and it's been absolutely horrific, the effects of the pandemic. But I'm talking more from the Western world. We tend to be a bit more wealthy, and yeah, it's but I like to, more than anything, I like to think that people's sort of attitude, their view on life has changed a little bit because of, in the face of adversity, in the face of actually, I could get COVID and I could be very sick and die, you know. And I think people start to appreciate, I like to think they're appreciating more the good values of life, and that includes the arts. That's what I like to think, but I might just be kidding myself, I don't know.
I just want to two takeaways for me. I just want to wrap up this way. There's something that you mentioned about the story when you were in 4-year retreat. The use of
Yes.
the block print, or this, not the block print, but the script.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about being in lockdown over a long period of time that just, I want to keep reminding all of us to think about plugging in somehow to a long-term project, so that we can trace and track ourselves over the course of time. So I'm very grateful to be surrounded by all the people on the call today, just because we're in this together for years, and so that's a wonderful thing. And the other thing that I really enjoyed was the idea of creating something that uplifts everybody else. That through your own clear mind, the product that you're creating has some consequence to bear on the greater totality. That to me is a very, very beautiful message, Tashi, and I really, really want to thank you for that. I know that you also made room for other kinds of artwork that is as a true expression of what the plight of humanity might be going through, but then in terms of Dharma art, really the intentionality behind it is to clear one's mind in order to create something that uplifts others. That's truly bodhisattva energy. So I just want you to know that we feel that from you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure I'm not alone when I say cruising on all that's on offer on Instagram. When I stumble upon a post like yours, it does that instantly for me. The integrity and the clarity and the compassion that comes through is very clean, and I want you to know that that's an impression that is always with me when I see your work and when I see you too. So I just want to thank you again for all the work that you do. Thank you for making time for us. Thank you for sharing all your history of this creative process with us. And I hope that you'll join us again sometime in the future.
I certainly will. Thank you for your very kind words.
Okay, guys, have a good weekend. Thanks for joining. It's a few minutes late, but I sure it was well worth it. And again, if you can tag Tashi and promote his work on your Instagram, that would be always. He won't say it, but I'll say it on his behalf. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week in the courtyard. Thanks all very much, and take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Well.
very much.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you.